Okay, so I think this is recording. Um, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna get into it, I guess. Um, Hi everybody. Um, this is our Invisible Identities workshop. For those who could not make it in person, here is the recorded workshop about different identities. So I just have like introductions here. I'm Cameron. I'm a student leadership consultant in the Leadership Center. She, her pronouns. I'm a sophomore political science major. And then when we had our in-person workshop, we also had Zachary Strickler here with us from the Student Accessibility Services Department, offering a lot of different information about identity. So we partnered with SAS on this workshop, and we have a lot of very interesting information for you guys. So just like a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about in this next probably 30 to 45 minutes. This is how the workshop is going to run. Who are we? Who's at the table? We're going to talk about how identity relates to leadership. And then we're also going to go over a bunch of different resources. So first of all, this workshop is sponsored by the Leadership Center here at Kent State. For those who do not know who we are located on the second floor of the Student Center. We offer a lot of different services for Kent State students and faculty. So we assist in leadership development and connections. We do a lot of different services in order to do that. Workshops such as this one, we do the Leadership Challenge, which is a more interactive, fun activity to challenge your leadership and teamwork skills. We also do Kent Talks, where we talk about civil discourse and how to have conversations about contentious topics. We also have lessons in leadership. Those take place on Thursdays at noon with different special guests from around the university. And student accessibility services, I'll just be talking briefly because this is not my department, but you can do individual meetings with a diversity coordinator, different ways to get off of the struggle bus, study tips. It's very unique to you. So SAS has a lot of different services for people who require different accessibility things, and they can offer just about anything that you require. So before we get into the content of this workshop, I'm just going to have anybody who's watching think about these upcoming statements. Since we are not in person, we cannot do this step across the line. However, if we were, it would just be like, I am going to say this statement, and then you would step forward if this applies to you or someone that you know. This does require some vulnerability. So for those watching at home, just take a second and think about these statements and how they relate to you or someone that you know. It's important to remember that everybody has a lot of different accessibility requirements and very different identities, so we just kind of want to honor that. So think about, do you or someone you know have a physical disability? You or someone you know has felt unwelcome or excluded in a given space? You or someone you know has not been able to participate due to lack of accessibility. You or someone you know has an intellectual or learning disability. And finally, you or someone you know struggles with their identity. So this is just a way to kind of experience and see how other people have so many other different things going on than just ourselves. The world is very wide, and there are a lot of different identities for everybody. Not one person is made the same. Okay, so getting into the actual content of this workshop, we're going to talk about what exactly an invisible identity is. So I'm sure that many people, especially student leaders who have done workshops and conferences before, have seen the identity wheel, which is states a lot of different things, both visible and invisible, things like race, ethnicity, your socioeconomic status, just to name a few. Those how those are important to you, or they're not as important to you. How often do you think about those? But in this workshop, we're going to be focusing on invisible identities. These are things that cannot be seen by the naked eye and are not visible until you engage with others. So everybody has various invisible identities that other people probably cannot tell just by looking at you. Close friends and family may be aware of these different identities, but unless you are engaging with others and really talking to them about what's going on in your personal life, they may not know. So kind of going off of all of this, invisible identities are very, very important because it's how somebody identifies personally, what is important to them. These can take a lot of different shapes. It's different for everybody, and like I said earlier, the world is wide and everybody has different things that are important to them. Um, and these identities also shape how people view the world. So they are really important, whether they're kind of subconscious, you're not really thinking about them that much, they actually have an immense amount of influence on how you interact with other people, how you interact with the world around you. So we have some both visible and invisible identities. The invisible ones are things like first generation status, your sexuality and gender identification. Um, Ethnicity may be considered an invisible identity if it's not visible. Something like race is more or less visible. But military status, addiction status, whether you are a non-traditional or adult learner in college, your socioeconomic status, and your parental status are all things that you may not be able to tell about a person just by looking at them. These are some invisible disability types, excuse me. So we have four listed here: medical, learning disabilities, psychological, neurodiversity. There are a lot of different things. This is really up SAS's alley. They work with a lot of students who have a number of these different invisible identities. People who have disabilities that impact their reading, writing, math, and cognitive processes that can make college and learning very difficult. Things like chronic health conditions or underlying health issues that you cannot tell visually. Psychological invisible identities, things like anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, and also neurodiversity. So neurodiversity is how your brain processes. So things like autism spectrum, ADHD, OCD, and Tourette's, just to name a few. So this slide goes into what is no longer used versus what is now considered an accepted term when referring to different identities, especially those with disabilities that you may not be able to see. Now there are some like wheelchair user or uses a wheelchair, that is what we would consider acceptable now. And deaf of heart and deaf/hard of hearing, those may be considered visible identities, but things like people with disabilities or disabled people or an intellectual disability person with an intellectual disability you may not be able to visualize those things. But some of these, I do want to touch upon some of these no longer used terms. Normal, suffers from, special needs, things like that. Those are really considered degrading and looking down on people who suffer from some kind of disability. So we definitely want to shy away from using these and start using these more acceptable terms. These statistics, I think, are really, really interesting. It puts a lot of things into perspective. 61 million adults in the US alone have a disability. That is almost 30% of the population. That is a huge number of people. And 19% of college students have a disability, which goes into this next one that about 2,600 Kent State students are registered with SAS. That is a huge population here at our own, what we consider home, of students who have something that hinders them in some way, and they are reaching out for accessibility and for assistance in any way. So now that we've talked a little bit about what these things are, we are going to touch on how do we address different identities. This is really important, especially if you are a student leader. We need to make sure that we are being welcoming and inclusive to anybody and everybody. And we definitely want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to be accessible. So the first thing we want to talk about is creating inclusive spaces and places. So things that I have seen around campus more recently are including pronouns and chosen names on name tags. or introductions, this is really, really great. We've adopted this here at the Leadership Center, adding our pronouns to everything. Whether you consider it important or not, it actually is really helpful for other people, especially if you have specific pronouns and we don't want to create a space where there's a possibility of misgendering somebody. That can be really detrimental to mental health and psychological health. We also want to provide opportunities to share experiences and perspectives. We want to create spaces where students can do that if they feel so inclined to. We also want to make sure that we are scheduling flexibly and providing various ways to participate. I think even once COVID has finally subsided a little bit, we're still going to be seeing a lot of online options because some people prefer it that way. And some people have realized that they actually need that online space, whether it's classes or meetings or whatever it may be. Sometimes this may be what you need. Using amplification, which also kind of goes along with captioning videos and including transcripts. This has come a long way in the last few years, and we hope to adopt something like that here in the Leadership Center. And I definitely would encourage other student leaders to pitch this to their departments or have conversations with professors about ways they can be more inclusive and welcoming. Descriptions of visual images for those who are disabled or have a disability regarding their eyesight. Using high contrast in presentation, providing electronic versions of printed materials. These are all great examples of ways that we can remain inclusive and have a welcoming space. Now you may be thinking, while I'm going over all of this information, why should you even care about it? Well, not only is it really important because identity itself is important, but there are also a lot of things that can flourish from creating an inclusive space. Having different perspectives and experiences brings a lot of different ideas to the table, and a lot of different perspectives can really create more of an understanding of what the population is experiencing, especially in a college setting. Problem solving is also influenced by caring about identity because different experiences can lead to different solutions and seeing different solutions. And maybe I can't see a certain solution, but somebody else can. And they bring that to the table. That is something that is really, really awesome to see. It also can help identify barriers for those who can visualize and experience this more. It can help break down those barriers that people may be using or may have subconsciously and they aren't really aware of it. We can bring those forward and identify how to break those down. So all of these things, all of leadership and or all of identity, both visible and invisible, they all impact leadership. This is, you may think why, but honestly, if you just say like, well, who am I? What is important to me? That's your identity. I have values and morals, and you have values and morals, and everybody does. Those are part of your identity. Those are things that are important to you. So this also can go into what do you look for in a team? What are you looking for in other people? That is including identity. These can really influence your leadership philosophy. I'm not sure if anybody has gone through this before, creating their leadership philosophy and what is important to them in a team and when leading a group of people. That is different for everybody. And this is just like identity. It's something that takes all of those parts of your identity and puts them out into the world. And that is really, really important. So identity also can influence your leadership style and philosophy. Whatever is deep down important to you, however you perceive the world, and however you identify is going to have an impact in your leadership. It can also influence behaviors, attitudes. It can increase your interpersonal skills, and your beliefs can change by just acknowledging identities and how they relate to your leadership. So before we finish up, we are going to talk a little bit about these campus resources because there are so many. And all of these can support both visible and invisible identities for those who are looking for that. So of course we have our student accessibility services, and I do want to give a shout out to them, although they are not here with us. They provided a lot of information and a lot of insight into the things that I talked about today. They have a plethora of resources, especially if you are somebody who requires accessibility. I definitely recommend going to talk to them. We also have things like the LGBTQ plus center and the women's center. Both of those departments provide so many resources for students, both with safe spaces and how you can flourish academically and in your professional development. The SMC, the Student Multicultural Center, is a fantastic place to be with people who are like you, be with people who have similar experiences to you, and just be in a safe environment. International Student Affairs and Center for Adult and Veteran Services. Those are also really great examples of invisible identities. It may be, you may not be able to tell if somebody is an international student or if someone is a veteran, but those are a major part of people's identities. And if you are looking, if that applies to you, if this is up your alley, then I definitely I definitely encourage you to go and find these resources on campus. We also have the collegiate recovery community, which I was not aware of until I spoke with SAS directly regarding this workshop, but they provide addiction services and addiction recovery services. That is a huge invisible identity and plays a major role in somebody's life. So that is there for those who need it. We also have counseling and psychological services for those experiencing any mental or psychological hinderings. If you want to go to their acronym is CAPS, they have a lot of different services and resources for students. Kent State of Wellbeing is one of my favorite campus resources. They do a lot of meditation, both in person and online, and just a lot of mindfulness exercises that are really, really great for those stressful school weeks, especially coming up with finals. We also have the Care Center, which is awesome if you're experiencing food insecurity or housing insecurity. If you have those physical needs that you need to be met, the Care Center is actually located right across from us on the second floor of the Student Center. Highly recommend going to utilize their services. We also have TRIO student support services and Campus Kitchen. So we have so many things here at Kent State to support pretty much everybody, no matter what you need. I think we have it. So if you are now being made aware of resources that you weren't aware of before, please do not hesitate to use them. So I did not expect this to go so quickly, but thank you guys for tuning into this. I really appreciate those who are interested in this kind of material and interested in educating themselves and learning more about different things. Identity and leadership is huge. It's not talked about enough. Like I said earlier, what is important to us is going to play a role in how we perceive and experience the rest of the world. So I want to thank you guys for listening, and thank you guys for wanting to learn more about invisible identities. Please don't hesitate to reach out to the Leadership Center if you guys have any questions or concerns or suggestions for what we should do in the future. Our email is lead@kent.edu. We are located on the second floor of the Student Center. Our website is fully functioning. We also are on Instagram and Twitter at Kent State Leads. So again, thank you so much and hope to see you soon.